حبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, the Quranic theme that I'm going to share with you and share a few verses that talk about it, is the theme of avoiding fahisha. And this is very powerful in the Quran. And before we kind of share the verses, I want to talk a little bit about this topic because it's important. One of the major differences between being Muslim and being a citizen within the Western society, and frankly speaking, at this point, being a citizen in any society. I don't even know if this used to be just a Western society problem when I was a kid. When I grew up in a small village. Grew up in Saudi Arabia, in a small village in Syria. It seemed like the problems of the Western society were specific to the Western society. They don't seem to be anymore. It seems that they have successfully infected all of us with these problems. We've always known that there is a main difference between how the Abrahamic faiths function on this topic and what Western society wants to achieve. This is not new. This is not a hypothesis. I don't have to assume these things or give theories. This is something this is a struggle that happened here. It happened in this part of the world. When the United States of America was being built, the ethical struggle within it was whether they were going to adopt the ethics and morals of the church, or the way of or the Judeo-Christian values versus if they weren't. So this struggle took a number of decades. And at the beginning, they adopted the Judeo-Christian model. And they took upon themselves the same principles that we do regarding what a fahisha is and how to go by these relationships between men and women. And then they lost that fight in the long run. In the long run, they lost the fight. The liberals, and I'm not talking about the political party here, just so it's very clear. I'm not interested in my hat is not being thrown into the political arena. I don't care about the politics. I'm talking about just the way of life. Those who defined themselves or identified as liberals throughout the last century, I think that's a safe estimate, fought with all of their might against these values, the Judeo-Christian values within the West. And over time, they were able to shift the line, shift the needle, and move kind of the line to the left, to the direction that they want, changing what was acceptable within their own society. And that is the key. That's how you do it. You change what is acceptable. You change the norm. You change what is ma'ruf and what is munkar within a society. It takes time, but if you're good, if you're persistent, and you spend enough time, you can do it. But just like you can do it in the negative way, you can do it in the positive way as well. Like the shifting norms is something that can happen in both directions. Just like they were able to shift the norms of fahisha as an identifiable sinful act, or an act that is frowned upon societally or socially, to something that was normalized, that was no longer an issue. Performing it was not considered something that was negative. You were not looked down upon if you did it. You can always shift that back again. But it takes a similar amount of time and twice the amount of effort to do that. So when you look at the Prophet ﷺ's message, one of the main themes within the Quran is refusing the concept of fahisha, is refusing the normalization of it, and refusing those who normalize it, and pointing it out as an act of sin, as an act of filth, as something that is corrupt, as something that defies purity, as something that ruins the morals of society. That's how it was looked at. And this is an extremely important stance that you as a Muslim you have to take. You have to accept that you're a part of this equation. We agree with the Western society on a lot of things. Surprisingly, a lot of things. They've actually nailed it on so many fronts regarding what Islam teaches. It's actually refreshing. They got so many things exactly right, the way that we were taught them to be correct from the Prophet ﷺ, from the Book of Allah. almost as if they were, almost as we feel sometimes that they must have read the Quran, because this is exactly how we would behave in these situations. So they nailed so many of these things. But regarding this topic, we could not differ with them more. We could not differ with them more than we differ with them. And that difference and that discrepancy has to be made clear. You have to make it. Doesn't mean that we're not capable of tolerating the people who disagree with us on this topic. It doesn't mean that we can't live with them in harmony and that we cannot get along. No, we can. But we have to be very clear that this is absolutely not something that we're okay with. Everything about it. You have learned throughout your life. Forgive me if this is a little bit of a longer introduction today. Forgive me. It's just something I think is important for you to think about. You have learned to accept, not accept, you've adapted to this narrative a little bit. Not adopted it, you've adapted to it. I mean, you've accepted that this is something that they do. We don't agree with it, but they do it, so we don't really think about it. That's why you're capable of watching so many movies. You watch all these movies, and there's always the guy has a girlfriend, or the lady has a boyfriend, and they are engaging in sexual relations, and they've been doing it for a long time. You don't watch the TV when they do this, turn it off immediately, I can't watch this anymore. No, we've accepted that this is how they are. We can't really fight this anymore. And if we're going to do that, we're going to end up never being able to watch another piece of theater or cinema for the rest of our lives. So we decide that we continue to point it out to be haram. We continue to say this is completely unacceptable. However, we understand that this is what they're doing, and we let them. We just accept that that's how they're living their lives, understanding that we're not okay with that. This is how we've kind of functioned and adapted to this situation. The problem with that is that with time, you go from adapting to accepting that other people are doing something, to normalizing it for yourself. It just takes time. So they are in this for the long haul, and they know. This is because they are more scientific than we are. They look at the data. They know that societies shift over time. The human brain and the human psyche is capable of accepting outrageous things if you just continue to show it to them every day, right? Death and suffering, murdering of someone is something that is outrageous. But if I show it to you, a picture of a murdered individual, a murdered innocent person, every day I show you another picture of someone who was brutally murdered, an innocent person. Every day, over a couple of years, maybe more, you'll stop reacting. I'll desensitize you. We know that works psychologically because it works biologically. Most of what doctors, this is what they do. We do understand. Now you can desensitize the body to a lot of things. It's how people actually get through horrible diseases and how they put up with horrible treatments. It's because you can desensitize somebody. So just like we can be desensitized biologically, our receptors can go numb to a stimulator. Psychologically, we can have a similar reaction. You do carry the trauma deep inside. You can ask the psychiatrist about this. You continue to carry that trauma inside, and at some point it will cause some issues. But you can be numb to something. When it comes to fawahish, this is where the problem lies. Is that they are slowly numbing us to fawahish. Yeah, so fulan has a significant other, right? A significant other. This is what they've been in a relationship for many years. They may even have children. They may even have children outside of wedlock, outside of nikah. They're having children in sifah. Slowly we're getting, this is norm. There's nothing wrong with us tolerating people who live that way and accepting their freedom of choice of going that way. But for us to normalize these behaviors and to see them as, they're fine, it's no big deal, everyone, no, that's not the same thing. As Muslims, this is a stance that we take. It's very clear that society should function in a certain way. It exists in a certain manner. And certain behaviors will never be okay. Zina will never be okay. Zina is a fahisha. Zina is a fahisha. Any sexual expression of a human being outside of wedlock or matrimony between a man and a woman is absolutely unacceptable. It's a fahisha. It'll never be okay. We will never accept that. We'll never be on board with that. The world that we live in today has changed lanes with that. I can't imagine I can't imagine having a daughter or a son at 15, 16 and sitting down and talking to them about using condoms as they engage in sexual relations with people that they know from school. To me, this is a nightmare that will wake me up at night screaming. Like I'll wake up screaming at night if this happens. I may even wet the bed if I were to see in my dreams something like this occurring within my family. It's absolutely absurd. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. You are living around people who have no problem with this. This is the norm. They look at me for thinking this way. I am being condescending. They look in a condescending way towards me for thinking that way. Where really the way that we understand Islam is what you're doing is a fahisha. It's absolutely haram. It's ethically and morally unacceptable. It's wrong. It's harming the person that's engaging in it. It's harming the society that they're being a part of. And we're seeing today the outcomes of these behaviors. Today we see it. We see what's happened to families and to homes and to raising children. And we're seeing how it's affecting people when you take the traditional family values and you trash them. Starting by allowing people to express themselves. An aspect of yourself, which is your sexual existence, is very delicate. It's confusing even. It's a confusing aspect of who you are. You're confused with this from the moment that you hit puberty, basically to the day you die. We have very little understanding of it for our own selves. For you to allow it to be practiced openly in whatever direction a person wants is only increasing the confusion and making it more impossible for people to figure out what they're supposed to do with it. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains, here's what I put for you, here's how you should practice it, here's the proper use for it, and here's how you will live in some degree of happiness and harmony with it. You're not told as Muslims to tuck it away and say this is an aspect of your life that you should be ashamed of or that you should not express. No, as Muslims you are celebrated. This is a celebrated part of who you are. The only time you are commanded to, it's not permissible, you are commanded to show joy, to sing and dance. You're commanded to do these things. If the Prophet ﷺ saw a wedding and there was no dancing and singing, he would tell them, where is it? Aina lahu? Where is lahu? Put lahu into this. Why? Because you celebrate this act of halal, because it's marriage, because people are coming together. What's happening? You are taking care of a basic need. Yes, there is the social need of companionship and all that, but intimacy. Understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called everything that's outside of this beautiful relationship of wedlock or matrimony between a man and a woman. Any other form of sexual expression is called fahisha, as to differentiate it from regular sin. See, al-ma'asi with dhunub is an umbrella term. All sin fall under it. But the Quran specifies a specific type of sin, and they call it fahisha. And I can't call someone who went and stole something, break an entry, or someone beat someone up. All these are sin. I can't call any of them fawahish. If you were to call that, a Muslim scholar would laugh at you. Someone, what are you doing? A fahish is a very specific type of sin. It is sexually oriented in nature. And we as Muslims carry the beacon on this front. And we have to continue to do so. And we have to educate our young ones to be able to understand how to deal with this in a healthy manner here in the West. Because you are living around people who disagree with you heavily, and you're living within a country that disagrees with you heavily in terms of its policy. So how do you deal with this? This requires some time. This requires work. This requires the community to put in some effort in educating themselves on how to understand this topic, how to deal with it within the school system, how to deal with it within the workplace, how to deal with it on a political front, how to educate children about it and what exactly they should understand from it, how they're supposed to deal with it, all of this. And this takes time. And we're very behind, in my opinion, on this front. Like, we're not doing a very good job about this, which is causing so much dissonance in the minds of our youth, that they're struggling with this. They're not sure what to do. They don't know how to function. They're at school. They're in high school. All of their friends, this is the norm. They're actually questioned. They're being questioned in their own womanhood or manhood. Why is it that you don't have a companion? Why aren't you? You can't attract a mate. You're not good enough to attract them, and they don't care anymore whether it's the opposite gender or the same, which is even a bigger musibah. It's even a bigger musibah. That now it doesn't even matter what you attract. Even if you attract a door, it doesn't make a difference. They don't care anymore. which even makes it more confusing. So someone who is trying to figure themselves out in life in high school, this is very hard. This is a big struggle. This can harm people who have mental health struggles, who are already trying to figure out other aspects of their lives. This will just make it worse. And speak to the psychologists in our community and the psychiatrists and the people who work in these fronts. They'll tell you it's turning into an epidemic. And we actually have issues we have to deal with here. The Quran, one of the Quranic themes, the main Quranic themes, is avoiding fawahish. That this is something that we actively avoid. And I'm going to share with you 3 sets of verses today that talk about this within the surah. The first verse that exists within the first set of 4 rak'at that we're going to listen to inshallah ta'ala tonight is ayah number 33 of Surah Al-A'raf, where he says subhanahu wa ta'ala, قُلْ إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ رَبِّيَ الْفَوَاحِشَ مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَنَ وَالْإِثْمَ وَالْبَغْيَ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ وَأَن تُشْرِكُوا بِاللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ سُلْطَانًا وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. He talks about 5 things, 5 categories of haram. 5 categories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made. He says, إِنَّمَا حَرَّمْ, meaning exclusively. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't make a lot of things haram. There are 5 categories of things that are haram. Right? Towards the end, he says, وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, to speak on God's behalf without knowledge, to make things up. Right? And this is where bid'ah falls in. And this is where coming up with new faiths. And this is where making things up, where you speak without knowledge. You don't have the proper knowledge, you were not educated appropriately, and you're just making things up. Here's where people have agendas, people who want to monetize religion or build cults or benefit personally. They start saying things that doesn't exist. تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. You're saying things, you're saying that Allah wants this, says this, teaches this, and He doesn't. He never did. You're just choosing to say that because there's some benefit in it for you, some gain. Right? The one before that, وَأَن تُشْرِكُوا بِاللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ سُلْطَانًا, for you to associate with Allah someone that He did not, and He explained that is an associate of His. You're equalizing with God someone who is not equal to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And shirk is obviously a well-documented problem. But the first thing He points out here subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-A'raf, the first thing He points out, قُلْ إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ رَبِّيَ الْفَوَاحِشِ. He has made, prohibited upon you, al-fawahish. And then, مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَنَ, that which is apparent and that which is hidden. Meaning a fahisha that people can see, which is the worst type of fahisha, because it's not just a sin that harms yourself and the person that you're engaging with, it's also harming the community that you're making watch. You are normalizing for the community, which is even worse. وَمَا بَطَنَ, and that which you do secretly, it's less harmful, but it's just as haram. It doesn't make it, it's still haram the same way. وَالْإِثْمِ, all types of sin. This is the kind of umbrella term of sin. وَالْبَغْيَ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ, for you to transgress against someone or take something that you don't have the right to take. You take something or someone without right, meaning you do it in a transgressing, oppressive manner. These are the categories of haram. Fawahish, all types of fawahish, apparent and secretive. Sinful behavior, transgression against others. Problems of i'tiqad, which is shirk and all that comes with it. And then making things up. Adding to the religion something that was not there. Speaking on Allah's behalf without knowledge. These are the 5 categories of haram that exist within Islam. These are not the 5 things, the 5 categories, right? Because fahisha is a category. There are many behaviors that exist under it that are haram. It's not just one behavior. It's not, zina is one problem. There's a number of other things that exist with it. It's the night of Ramadan, so you're probably wondering why are we talking about something so gross. In our deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make this differentiation. Where you talk about Islam, you only talk about this aspect of Islam, or this thing within Islam, and not the other thing. When we talk about our deen comes together as a whole, everything together. There is no differentiation. There is no, you talk about this but not that. We talk about it all. We take Islam holistically, and we accept Islam as a whole. Every aspect of Islam, that which we find easy to follow, easy to practice, and that which is more of a struggle, that which is more difficult for us to practice. Definitely speaking, as Muslims in the West, and I don't think it's just in the West anymore. I haven't been outside of the West for the last 13 years, so I don't know anymore. But I'm pretty sure that this problem is now widespread and global, where fawahish are becoming normalized, where performing these behaviors is no longer seen as sinful, as wrong, as harmful. And as Muslims, we have to take we have to take the lead on this, because our deen is extremely clear. There is no room for interpretation here. There is no room for us to say, well, maybe this, no, maybe anything. A fahisha is a fahisha, and we refuse it holistically. We refuse it categorically, philosophically, and practically. And we don't allow it in our houses, and we don't want to be infected by it immorally. And we will point it out. And people who perform it in our community will be supported, but they will not be supported to do it publicly. Someone who performs fahisha is welcomed in the masjid. They're not welcome to parade their fahisha in the masjid. They're not welcome to say, well, I performed this fahisha. No, you're not allowed to publicly celebrate your sin. We don't celebrate sin. We're not proud about fawahish. We never will be. This is an extremely clear difference, ya akhi, between us and between the West that we live in. It's very healthy for communities and societies to identify what they agree upon and what they don't agree upon. It is the method for tolerance and for civil rights and neighborly living. We live with people well when we know very clearly that which we agree upon and that we're going to work together to achieve, and that which we beg to differ. We're not okay with it. So that we respect our boundaries. So we respect each other's boundaries. Our boundaries aren't being respected anymore. Our boundaries aren't being respected anymore. We are not the bid'ah here. We didn't come up with something new. What was being done in this world, in this part of the world today, has no precedence in the history of the human race. At least no positive precedence. At least no positive precedence. Whenever this happened, whenever a community allowed themselves to become this liberal in terms of their sexual expression and behavior, they have declined and found their demise very quickly. Too quick to actually document any form of success after they did this. And you're welcome to go study what happened in the Roman Empire, and what happened in the Persian Empire, what happened in Indian kingdoms and empires throughout history. Once they allowed for this type of behavior, once sex was made open to do whatever you want whenever you wanted, you don't stick around for very much after that. You don't stick around very long after that as a community and as a society. So we have to take a stance on this and be clear, because our Quran, قُلْ إِنَّمَا is not to emphasize. إِنَّمَا is to say exclusively. Exclusively al-fawahish, number one. Number one. Read it. It's not me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ رَبِّيَ الْفَوَاحِشِ مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَّنَ. That which was apparent and that which is secretive. And then he goes through the rest of the muharramat, the rest of the acts that are considered prohibited within our deen. That's the first ayah within the first set of rak'ah. The second ayah, or the second number of verses that we're going to listen to in the second set of rak'ah tonight, inshallah ta'ala, is the story of Sayyidina Lut alayhi salam. وَلُوطًا إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ أَتَأْتُونَ الْفَاحِشَةَ مَا سَبَقَكُمْ بِهَا مِنْ أَحَدٍ مِنَ الْعَالَمِينَ. When Lut turned to his people that he was sent to, the qawm that he was sent to teach, are you actually performing a fahisha that no one has publicly endorsed before you? Like you're actually going out to the point where you're going to normalize a fahisha. No one before you has normalized this. This fahisha happened before in history, but it was never normalized. It was never seen as something that this is the norm. You don't like it, get out. Or what you're doing is wrong. What we're doing is the correct thing. That never happened before Sodom. Before Sodom, no one had done this. إنكم لتأتون الرجال شهوة من دون النساء بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. Indeed, you are taking your shahwa to, he's talking to the men, you're taking your shahwa to your peers, to men, instead of taking this into marriage with wives. Indeed, you are musrifun. Indeed, that is wrong, and you are people who are going beyond what is acceptable. Al-israf is when you go too far. You go too far. You use too much. You say too much. That's israf. You went beyond. You went overboard. You guys are going too far. So وَمَا كَانَ جَوَابَ قَوْمِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ قَالُوا أَخْرِجُوهُمْ مِنْ قَرْيَتِكُمْ إِنَّهُمْ أُنَاسٌ يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. The answer of his people was, remove Lut and his family out of this village, or out of this town. Indeed, they are people who claim to be pure. They seek purity. يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. They care about cleanliness and all that other nonsense. This is what they're saying. Tahara. What is tahara? What are you talking about? You want to be clean? What, you want to be pure? Get out. Get out. Take this nonsense with you. Yeah. You can push people's minds to the point where seeking cleanliness, seeking purity, seeking that is against the norm, is frowned upon. It's not, what are you doing? Well, you're trying to be better than everyone else? You think that you're... فَأَنْجَيْنَاهُ وَأَهْلَهُ إِلَّا امْرَأَتَهُ كَانَتْ مِنَ الْغَابِرِينَ وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مَطَرًا فَانظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. So we saved him and his people and his family, except his wife, because his wife, this is a scary piece. It's designed to scare you, so it's okay if you listen to it and it bothers you a bit. Lut's wife did not perform this act. She did not. We know that because the Prophet ﷺ told us that. The Prophet's homes, any Prophet's home, fahisha does not enter it. Right? This is well known, that a fahisha does not enter the house of a Prophet. All of the Prophets, ﷺ. Which is why it was absurd that they said something about Aisha. It made no sense, because Prophets don't have this. Lut ﷺ's wife did not perform this. She was just okay with it. Okay? She normalized it. She's like, yeah, what do you want with them? Let them do whatever they want. Let them do whatever they want. So when Allah punished the people of Sodom, she stayed behind with them. She stayed behind with them. She didn't get out like Lut alayhi salam and his kids did, and his daughters. They got out because they continued to say, this is not right. We say that. It's not right. I don't have the right to force you out of it. I don't have the right legally to discourage you of it. But my opinion, my official stance on it, is that this is not correct and this is harmful. I'm a physician. I have to treat people from every background. I don't discriminate between people who walk into my clinic. I would never make someone who lived a certain lifestyle feel less about themselves as I treated them because of this lifestyle. Because between the walls of this clinic office, my job is not to morally preach to them. My job is not to project my values on them. My job is to treat them medically and help them and support them. But outside of that, when I am asked my opinion on this matter, to me this is a fahisha, and it's haram, and it's absolutely unacceptable, and it's morally wrong, and it should not be occurring. And that's my right. And it's my right not to want to have that within my house and in my community. It's my right. The fact that saying that right now could cost me my job is absolutely outrageous. And it's really weird that we've come to this far in life now. That saying something like what I just said right now could jeopardize my... But this is the whole point of us understanding who we are as Muslims. This is who we are. We don't accept... Our values are conservative. They're the Judeo-Christian values. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, his book, مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ التَّوْرَةِ and مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ الْإِنْجِيلِ. The Quran taught on this topic exactly what the Torah and Injil taught and educated by. The reason being is because we carry those same values. You have to differentiate between respecting people, treating them with dignity when they disagree with you or when they behave in ways that you don't agree with, versus you not agreeing philosophically, morally with a certain behavior and saying that this behavior is not appropriate and we don't agree with it and we don't think it's moral. People drink alcohol, right? For recreation purposes. You probably know a lot of people who do this all the time. You don't discriminate against them, you don't mistreat them, you don't look down. Do you accept this? No. Do you think it's ethically acceptable? No. This is an action that we're not okay with. We think it's wrong. Not a little bit, not a speck, not once in a while, nothing. For us as Muslims, owning it is haram. It should not be sold. It shouldn't exist. These bars should not exist to begin with. That's our opinion. We're not going to force people into that. We're not going to force people out of business. We're not going to do any of that stuff. However, we carry our stance morally and Islamically clearly. And this is the story of Lut alayhi salam. And the reason that we're told about his wife is because his wife, she normalized it. She was okay with it. It was fine. It's not fine. It's not. People have the right to make their choices. They can do whatever they want to do. I can't force them out of anything. But I continue to carry the stance that this is wrong. And this should not be the case. And this is not okay. And it's a fahisha. Right? Just like zina is a fahisha, this behavior is a fahisha as well. All right. The last set of verses that we're going to read in Surah Al-Araf, in the third set of 4 rak'at tonight, inshaAllah ta'ala, and enjoy, are words that you will hear that Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam was, وَاكْتُبْ لَنَا فِي هَذِهِ الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ إنا هدنا إليك قال عذابي أصيب به من أشاء ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء فسأكتبها للذين يتقون ويؤتون الزكاة والذين هم بآياتنا يؤمنون. So when Musa alayhi salam at the end, towards the end of his story, Surah Al-Araf turns to Allah and says, "Oh Allah, write for us in this life a hasana, and write for us at the end in the hereafter a hasana, meaning grant us goodness in this life, and grant us goodness yawm al-qiyamah. Inna hudana ilayk. Indeed, we have repented and turned back to you." And from that word they were called Yahud, because hadu ilallah. Hadu means they turned back. They turned back in guidance back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Musa said, "Hudana ilayk," and from that moment they were called the Yahud. So it's not actually a bad word that we to use. The word is Quranic. It has a beautiful meaning to it. Inna hudana ilayk. We have turned back in guidance and seeking guidance to you. So Allah will respond to him. قال عذابي أصيب به من أشاء. My punishment will reach whomever I will, and whoever I decree that my punishment will reach. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. And my compassion encompasses everything. And I will write it, فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا, to those who show mindfulness and give their zakah. And in their hearts they have accepted the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have used them to draw themselves closer to Him. But He continues. That's not where the ayah ends. Describing these people who are going to be worthy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah. You want to receive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah? Taqwa, zakah, iman. Continue. الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الرَّسُولَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّيِّ. The ones who follow the Prophet, the Messenger, al-Ummi, the one who comes from people who are illiterate, the one who didn't know how to read and write, but yet he was able to educate all of humanity until the day of judgment. النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل. The one that they will find his description, the promise of his prophecy, written within the Torah and written within the Injil. And if you want to know more about this topic specifically, Sheikh Emmanuel, Brother Emmanuel, runs a fiqh of da'wah course every semester or every second semester. And he goes through all of these pieces of evidence in detail. He'll take out the Torah and show you where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and take the Bible, the Injil, the New Testament, and show you where. So if you don't know where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam and referred to a prophet that will come within the mountains of Elia, within Mecca, then go listen, attend the course. We run the courses here for a reason, so that people can learn about their deen, that which they don't know. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala referred to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in the Torah, and referred to him in the Injil as well. مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل. How is he described in the Torah والإنجيل? يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر. Right? These are the ones that we know well. ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم. He does 5 things for them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the Prophet. Number 1, he commands bil-ma'ruf. He encourages people to continue to adhere to the norms that are positive, to the positive norms of society. وَيَنْهَاهُمْ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. And he prohibits them and discourages them from engaging in the norms that are negative in the society. There are societal norms that are negative. Not all societal norms are positive. Some of them are negative. Believe it or not, the society we live in see alcohol as a negative thing. The society we live in still, and people, individuals, they celebrate their drinking, but not the society. Not the country. The official way is that this is a negative thing. We agree with that. That's a good munkar. That's a munkar we have in common. We see drinking munkar, they see it too. Let's work together to bring down the amount of usage. Dukhan, smoking, vaping, all the other things that fill your lungs with nicotine and cause you to die earlier. It's a munkar. We see it as a munkar as Muslims, they do as well. So we work together on it. So the Prophet ﷺ comes and he's going to see what are the norms of society. What are the positive ones we're going to encourage? What are the negative ones we're going to discourage? وَيُحِلُّ لَهُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ. And he's going to make halal for everyone. الطَّيِّبَات, that which is of good nature. الطَّيِّب, that which is beneficial. That which is pure. That's what طَيِّبات are. You're commanded, يَا أَيُّهَا الرُّسُلُ كُلُوا مِنَ الطَّيِّبَات. All the prophets were called upon by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Eat from that which is beneficial and pure and beautiful. And tayyib, that which is good. That which comes from good source, good origin. It's halal in nature and is beneficial to you. Eat from that. This is why Allah put them here for you. You're not discouraged from eating in life. Despite Ramadan, yani. Despite the fact that you fast for 30 days, you're not discouraged from eating tayyibat. You're just asked to do it in moderation. You're just asked to do it in moderation and to specify tayyibat. and to make sure there are no khaba'ith. وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِث. And He makes haram upon them all of that which is khabith, that is wicked, that is filthy. This is how fawahish are seen in Islam. They're acts of filth. They're khabith, something that has there's no good to come from it. No good comes from this. That's what a khabith is. A tayyib, only good things come from it. Al-khabith, only bad things come from it. The Prophet ﷺ's description in the books of the Torah and Injil is that he's going to come and he's going to encourage positive societal norms, discourage negative societal norms. And he's going to make halal for people all that which is beneficial and good. And he's going to make haram for people all that which is filthy and harmful. And these behaviors, fawahish, they are filthy and they are harmful. And there no good comes from them. Absolutely no good comes from them. And then the fifth one, وَيَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. And he's going to remove up from the Yahud and the Nasara when they accept Islam some of the burdens that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had them carry when they accepted their faiths. Meaning within Judaism and Christianity, there are some restrictions that Islam has opened up, made easier. So some of the shackles and some of the burden, the shackles that they were living under, Islam came to remove for them till the end of time. Our deen is not, why is this verse important? This is why I'm putting it for you. Because our deen's goal is not to make life difficult. If anything, the fifth purpose of his prophecy alayhi salatu wasalam is يَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالِ, is to remove the shackles, remove the restrictions that don't need to be there. The difficulties that they are carrying in their life that they don't have to, the burdens that they didn't have to carry. Let's remove it. Let's lighten your weight. Here, lighten your weight. Remove the burden, stand up straight, feel better. You don't have to feel that we're just making haram for you the khaba'ith. That's it. We're just making haram that which is harmful and filthy and disgusting, and that which will ruin your mind and ruin your heart and ruin your body and ruin the society that you live in. That's what we're going to make haram for you. Nothing else. Wouldn't you want that? Wouldn't we want a Lord that is merciful enough for us to say, this is harmful, everything about it is harmful, stay away from it? Don't you want that? You want to, what, you prefer a Lord who wouldn't say that to you? Who would withhold information about what's harmful and let you fall into it and spend your life swimming in a swamp of difficulty and disease and harm? That's what, no. We want a Lord that will tell us, of course, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. He told us, He sent Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. He sent Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam to teach us, to say this is haram, this is harmful to you. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That was one of the purposes. He didn't come to shackle us. He came to break the shackles off, to allow you to stand straight, to hold your head tall, to live well, to live and function and achieve and find your potential. This is why he was sent alayhi salatu wasalam, so that you can do that. But in order to do that, he had to point out for you that which is not helpful to you. You have to stay away from these things. Stay away from drugs. Stay away from alcohol. Stay away from lying and backstabbing. Stay away from fahisha. Stay away from these things. They only harm you. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Don't even come near it. Forget about doing it. Don't come near it. إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. It's a fahisha. Al-fuhsh is doing something so I didn't talk about the explanation of the word. Let me just take a moment before the end and tell you. The word fuhsh is, for many scholars of linguistics, is the opposite of haya, for many of them. Haya is being aware and sensitive. Being aware and sensitive. And understanding people's boundaries and not wanting to engage in a behavior that will make someone feel ashamed, embarrassed, or uncomfortable. Fuhsh is when you don't care. Fuhsh is when you have no interest in that at all. When you don't mind at all to do things and say things and behave in ways that take away that sensitivity and that beauty and that purity. That's why there are words that are fuhsh. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, when you describe him, مَا كَانَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فَحَّاشًا وَلَا صَخَّابًا فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ. He never would fuhsh. He got angry, he got upset. He didn't start, as they say in Arabic, zinnaru nazil. He started saying words that you're like, oh my gosh, close my ears. He's using terms that should not be used. Every language has this, every culture has this. People get upset, they start saying things they shouldn't say. They use terms that are filled with fawahish. He never did, alayhi salatu wasalam, because you stay away from fahisha as far as you possibly can. Every aspect of fahisha. You don't engage in it. You don't look at it. You don't listen to it. You don't encourage it. When you consume pornography, you are encouraging the industry. You're encouraging men, filthy men, to take advantage of young girls who have no idea what they're doing, who come from broken homes and broken societies, to continue to abuse them and use them in a filthy manner for the satisfaction of an aspect of the human psyche that should not be entertained and should not be fulfilled. And if it's going to be fulfilled, it'll be fulfilled bil halal, in the proper channels. We are an ummah that avoids fawahish, refuses fawahish. And that is who we are. On with that. سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خير. خذ الأمانة.
Take this. I need you to take this, throw it out, and you have to pray on the other side where it's short. Pray here. Fill in this gap because you only fit here. You know the big guys don't. Okay. خلي صلي بالمكان الصغير. حتى
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر